The afternoon sun beat down on Maya Thompson's new Mercedes S-Class as she cruised through downtown Atlanta. The car's black paint sparkled like diamonds under the Georgia sun, turning heads as she drove past the busy sidewalks. Maya had worked hard for this moment. 6 years of building her real estate business from scratch, countless late nights, and finally, she had rewarded herself with her dream car. She was heading to close another major deal, dressed sharply in her navy business suit, her confidence as polished as her new vehicle. The meeting would make her the youngest developer to secure a contract for the city's new housing project. The digital clock on her dashboard showed 2:15 p.m. She was right on schedule. Then came the flash of blue lights in her rearview mirror. Officer James Miller had been parked in his usual spot near Peachtree Street, his eyes narrowing as the Mercedes passed by. Something about the car didn't sit right with him, or rather, something about who was driving it didn't match his expectations. He pulled out behind the Mercedes, following it for 2 blocks before hitting his lights. Maya's heart sank. She'd been through this before. The random stops, the suspicious looks, the unspoken questions about how she could afford such a car. Still, she remained professional, pulling over smoothly into an empty parking lot. She reached for her glove compartment, where she kept a folder with every document she might need. Registration, insurance, dealer paperwork, even the receipt from her purchase last week. Officer Miller approached, his hand resting casually on his holster, a detail Maya noticed but chose to ignore. She lowered her window, letting the cool, air-conditioned air escape into the humid Atlanta afternoon. "License and registration," Miller demanded, not bothering with the usual greeting. His eyes scanned the car's interior, taking in the new leather smell and pristine dashboard. "Of course, officer," Maya replied calmly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She handed over her license and the entire folder of documents. "Everything's in order. I just purchased the vehicle last week from Atlanta Luxury Motors." Miller flipped through the papers with a skepticism that made Maya's skin crawl. His radio crackled with routine police chatter, but his focus remained fixed on the documents, looking for any reason to justify his suspicions. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered suddenly, closing the folder without really reading it. "May I ask why, officer?" Maya's voice remained professional, but her mind was already racing through her options. Her phone was recording audio in her pocket, a habit she'd developed after hearing too many similar stories from friends. "There's an issue with your registration," Miller claimed, despite holding proof of the valid registration in his hands. "The vehicle's been flagged in our system." Maya knew this was impossible. She'd driven straight from the dealership to her insurance agent to handle all the paperwork personally. She also knew that arguing would only escalate the situation. Instead, she pressed the small button on her phone to start live streaming, keeping it hidden in her jacket pocket. The bustling street had slowed to a crawl as passersby noticed the scene unfolding. Several had already pulled out their phones, their cameras focused on the interaction. Among them was Thomas Jenkins, an off-duty reporter from the local news station, who recognized something wasn't right about this stop. Maya took a deep breath, reminding herself of what her father had always told her: "Keep your dignity, document everything, and let justice take its course." She reached for her phone, now fully visible, and said clearly, "Officer, I'm going to call my attorney before stepping out. I want to ensure my rights are protected." Miller's expression changed slightly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face as he realized this stop wasn't going to be as straightforward as he planned. Officer Miller stood straighter when he saw Maya recording the interaction. His hand tightened around the folder of documents, crinkling the freshly printed papers inside. "Turn off your phone," he ordered, his voice carrying an edge that wasn't there before. "I have the right to record this interaction," Maya responded calmly, though her heart was pounding against her ribs. She could see more people gathering on the sidewalk, their phones raised like silent witnesses to the unfolding scene. Miller stepped back to his patrol car, speaking into his radio. Maya could hear him requesting a tow truck, and her blood ran cold. Through her open window, His words carried clearly. Got a possible stolen vehicle situation here. Maya's fingers moved swiftly across her phone screen, sending her location to her attorney, Sarah Chen. She'd hired Sarah 2 years ago to handle her real estate contracts, but now she needed her for something far more personal. The response came almost instantly. Stay calm. Don't move. I'm 5 minutes away. The gathering crowd had grown larger. Among them, Thomas Jenkins, the off-duty reporter, had moved closer, his press badge visible on his chest. He was doing a live update on his social media, his quiet voice carrying the story to thousands of viewers. We're watching what appears to be a questionable traffic stop in downtown Atlanta. Officer Miller returned to Maya's window, this time with a different approach. His voice was unnaturally pleasant, almost mocking. Last chance to make this easy. Step out of the vehicle now, or I'll have to remove you myself. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from her brother Marcus. Saw Tom's live stream. On my way. Don't eat out of DGCR. The sound of an approaching tow truck made Maya's stomach twist. Her $120,000 car, her symbol of success, was about to be taken away on the back of a flat based on nothing but Officer Miller's baseless suspicion. Officer, Maya tried one last time, her voice steady despite her rising fear. I've shown you all the documentation. The dealership's number is right there. You can call them right now to verify my purchase. Miller ignored her, walking to meet the tow truck driver who had just pulled up. Maya could see them talking, the driver looking increasingly uncomfortable as he glanced between her and Miller. The gathering crowd had become restless. Murmurs of disapproval grew louder. Someone shouted, "This isn't right." Another voice called out, "We're watching you, officer." Miller's face reddened as he marched back to Maya's car. Out. Now. His hand moved to his belt again, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the dozens of recording phones. Just then, a sleek black SUV pulled up, and Sarah Chen stepped out, her high heels clicking against the pavement as she approached. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never lost a case. "Officer Miller," Sarah called out, reading his nameplate. "I'm Sarah Chen, Miss Thompson's attorney. Would you care to explain why you're attempting to impound a legally purchased vehicle with proper documentation?" The tow truck driver, who had been preparing his equipment, suddenly found something very interesting to adjust on his truck. Miller's face went from red to pale as Sarah approached, her phone recording everything. "We have a report," Miller started, but Sarah cut him off. "A report? Excellent. I'd love to see it. Also, I've just gotten off the phone with your supervisor, Captain Rodriguez. He's very interested in this situation." Maya watched through her windshield as Officer Miller's confident demeanor crumbled. The crowd had grown even larger, and she could hear news vans pulling up. Her brother Marcus had clearly made some calls. The power was shifting, and everyone could feel it. Miller's hand, which had been so quick to rest on his weapon, now fidgeted with his radio, all while Sarah Chen calmly waited for his response, her phone still recording every second. The next few minutes turned the quiet Atlanta street into something that looked like a movie scene. Maya's brother Marcus arrived with a full news crew from Channel 7, where he worked as a lead investigative reporter. Camera lights clicked on, and the evening news helicopter appeared overhead, its blades chopping through the humid air. Officer Miller's radio crackled to life. "Unit 247, this is Captain Rodriguez. Stand down immediately. Do not impound that vehicle. I repeat, stand down." Miller's face turned a shade paler. He looked around at the scene he created. Dozens of phones recording, news cameras rolling, his body camera blinking red, and Sarah Chen still standing there with a calm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "My client's time is valuable, Officer Miller," Sarah said, checking her watch. "She has a meeting with the City Council in 40 minutes to finalize a multi-million-dollar development project. Shall we wrap this up, or would you prefer to explain to the mayor why his new housing development is delayed?" The tow truck driver had already started packing up his equipment, wanting no part of what was clearly becoming a public relations nightmare. He gave Maya an apologetic wave as he climbed back into his truck. Maya's phone was buzzing nonstop now. The video of the stop had gone viral on social media, with thousands sharing it and commenting. Local civil rights leaders were already on their way, but Maya stayed focused, keeping her hands visible on the steering wheel, her dignity intact. Marcus approached Officer Miller with his microphone, cameraman in tow. "Officer Marcus Thompson from Channel 7 News. Would you care to explain why you attempted to impound a legally owned vehicle without cause? And could you comment on the 3 similar complaints filed against you in the past 6 months?" Miller's hand, which had been so quick to rest on his weapon earlier, now fumbled with his collar. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the car's shadow he stood in. "No comment," he muttered, backing away toward his patrol car. Sarah wasn't done yet. She pulled out her tablet, showing off her trademark preparation that had made her Atlanta's most feared civil rights attorney. "Before you go, Officer Miller, I have some interesting dashcam footage from your previous stops. Would you like to review them here, or should we discuss them with Internal Affairs?" The crowd had grown to over 100 people. Someone had brought water bottles to hand out in the Georgia heat. Others held up signs they'd quickly made, "Stop profiling," and "Justice for Maya," written in bold letters. Captain Rodriguez's black SUV pulled up, its lights flashing. He stepped out, a tall man with gray hair and a face that said he'd seen enough. "Miller, my office now," he barked. Then he turned to Maya, walking over to her car window. "Miss Thompson, on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department, I want to personally apologize for this incident. You're free to go. We'll be reviewing this situation thoroughly." Maya finally allowed herself to breathe normally again. She looked at the crowd, at her brother with his news crew, at Sarah standing guard like a tiny but fierce warrior, and at all the strangers who had stopped to witness and document what could have been just another untold story. "Thank you, Captain," Maya said, her voice clear and strong. "But this isn't just about me. How many others has Officer Miller stopped who didn't have a lawyer on speed dial or a brother in the news?" The captain nodded slowly, understanding the bigger picture. "We'll be pulling all of Officer Miller's records. Every stop, every complaint, everything." As Miller drove away in his patrol car, Maya finally stepped out of her Mercedes. The crowd cheered. Local business owners came out to shake her hand. Someone shouted, "You showed them the right way to fight back." Maya checked her phone. She still had 20 minutes to make her meeting. More than enough time to change history, one small victory at a time. The next morning, Maya's story was everywhere. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications as the video clips spread across social media like wildfire. The morning news shows played the footage on repeat, Maya calmly showing her documents, Officer Miller's aggressive behavior, and the crowd of supporters gathering to witness it all. But the real bombshell dropped when Marcus, doing what he did best as an investigative reporter, dug deeper into Officer Miller's past. Sitting at his desk at Channel 7, he pulled up police records that painted a disturbing pattern. His producer stood behind him, watching as the evidence piled up on his computer screen. "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing to his monitor. "In the last year alone, Miller has stopped 47 luxury vehicles. Every single one was driven by a person of color. And get this, he tried to impound 12 of them, claiming suspicious circumstances." The Mercedes dealership was quick to step in. The sales manager, Tom Wilson, appeared on live TV holding Maya's original purchase documents. "Miss Thompson bought this car fair and square," he declared. "She paid cash after years of saving up. I personally handled the sale. Officer Miller never even called us to verify. He just assumed the worst." Inside the police station, Internal Affairs officers were reviewing Miller's bodycam footage from the incident. The audio was damning. Before even approaching Maya's car, he could be heard muttering, "No way this car belongs here." The footage clearly showed him ignoring the valid documentation Maya presented. Sarah Chen had set up a command center in her law office, where she was collecting statements from other victims of similar stops. Her phone rang constantly as more people came forward with their stories. Her assistant could barely keep up with the incoming calls. "We've got 15 similar cases just from this morning's calls," Sarah told Maya over lunch. They sat in a quiet corner of a local cafe, away from the curious eyes of other customers. "Miller's been doing this for years, but people were too scared to speak up. You changed that." Maya stirred her untouched coffee, still processing everything. "What happens now?" she asked. Sarah pulled out her tablet, showing Maya a series of email exchanges with the police department. "They're trying to contain the damage. Miller's been put on immediate administrative leave. But here's the interesting part. They found something on his personal computer at the station." She swiped to another document. He was running a side business with a local towing company. Every card he impounded wrongfully. The towing company charged excessive fees to release them. They split the profits. The evidence was overwhelming. Miller's body camera had captured years of misconduct, but nobody had bothered to check until now. The footage showed a clear pattern: luxury cars, successful people of color, and the same towing company showing up every time. Local business owners started coming forward too. Security cameras from nearby stores had captured dozens of similar stops. A coffee shop owner shared footage of 3 different incidents right in front of his store. A parking garage manager provided recordings of Miller harassing drivers in expensive cars. The district attorney's office announced they were opening a formal investigation, not just into Miller, but into the entire towing scheme. The FBI's Civil Rights Division had also taken notice, sending agents to review the mounting evidence. Maya's phone buzzed again. This time, it was her real estate clients showing support. The city council had been impressed by how she handled the situation. Instead of letting it derail her meeting the day before, she turned it into a powerful discussion about community investment and trust. "You know what's ironic?" Maya said to Sarah, finally taking a sip of her cold coffee. "Miller thought he was taking my car away, but instead he gave me a platform to fight for real change. Sometimes the best revenge is letting justice work exactly the way it's supposed to." The police department's internal affairs office buzzed with activity like a disturbed beehive. Captain Rodriguez sat at his desk, rubbing his temples as he watched video after video of Officer Miller's past stops. Each new clip made his stomach turn more than the last. "Sir," his assistant poked her head in, "the FBI agents are here, and you need to see what they found." 2 FBI agents entered, carrying thick folders. Agent Lisa Martinez spread out documents across the captain's desk while her partner, Agent Thompson, pulled up files on his laptop. "Your Officer Miller was just the tip of the iceberg," Agent Martinez said, pointing to a complex chart. "We've uncovered a network of corrupt officers across 3 different precincts, all working with the same towing company, Golden Gate Towing." Captain Rodriguez leaned forward, his coffee forgotten. The numbers were staggering. Over 200 luxury vehicles impounded in the past year alone, mostly belonging to successful minorities. The towing company charged outrageous fees, sometimes up to $2,000 per day, to release the cars. "Look at this." Agent Thompson turned his laptop around. Miller's bank records show regular cash deposits matching half the towing fees. He wasn't just profiling people, he was running a full-blown extortion racket. Down the hall, internal affairs investigators interviewed other officers who had worked with Miller. Some broke down crying, admitting they'd seen what was happening but were too scared to report it. Others provided names of more officers involved in the scheme. Meanwhile, at Golden Gate Towing's office, FBI agents were boxing up computers and files. The owner, Mike Goldman, sat in handcuffs, watching as years of illegal profits were exposed. His secretary had turned informant, providing emails that showed how they coordinated with corrupt officers. They had a system. The secretary explained to investigators. Officers would target expensive cars driven by minorities, claiming suspicious circumstances. They'd call us exclusively for towing. We'd charge excessive fees, then split the money with the officers. Some people paid thousands just to get their cars back. Back at the station, Miller's locker was being searched. Hidden behind his spare uniform, investigators found a notebook with dates, car descriptions, and dollar amounts, his personal record of every illegal stop and payout. The district attorney called an emergency meeting with her top prosecutors. "This is bigger than just civil rights violations," she told them. "We're looking at corruption, extortion, conspiracy, and it goes back years." Maya's phone rang. It was Sarah with updates. "The FBI just called," Sarah said, her voice excited. "They want to talk to all our clients who faced similar situations. Your case broke open something huge." The news spread quickly through the city. Other police departments started internal reviews, worried the same thing might be happening in their jurisdictions. Civil rights organizations began compiling databases of similar complaints nationwide. Captain Rodriguez called a press conference. Camera flashes lit up the room as he stepped to the podium, his face grave but determined. "Today, we're announcing the largest internal corruption investigation in our department's history. What began with one officer's misconduct has exposed systematic abuse of power affecting hundreds of citizens." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. "To every person who was wrongly stopped, every vehicle wrongly impounded, every citizen whose rights were violated, we will make this right." Officer Miller and his conspirators didn't just break the law. They broke the public's trust. And thanks to Ms. Maya Thompson's courage in standing up, we can finally end this abuse. In her office, Maya watched the press conference on TV while working on her latest development project. Her phone buzzed with a text from her brother Marcus. "You started something big, sis. Real change is happening." She smiled, looking out her window at the city skyline. Sometimes the biggest changes start with one person simply refusing to be bullied. Her Mercedes key sat on her desk, no longer just a symbol of her success, but now a reminder that standing up for what's right can change an entire system. The consequences hit like a tidal wave. Officer Miller sat in a small room at the police station, his badge and gun already turned in, facing not just his superiors, but also federal prosecutors. His hand shook as he looked at the mountain of evidence against him. "We'll make this simple," the federal prosecutor said, sliding a thick folder across the table. "We have everything. The fake stops, the towing scam, the illegal profits. You can cooperate now or face the maximum charges." Miller's tough guy act crumbled completely. "Please," he begged, his voice barely a whisper. "I have a family. I can't go to prison." The same man who had tried to intimidate Maya was now close to tears. Across town, at Golden Gate Towing, federal agents were loading more boxes into their vans. They'd found a hidden room filled with cash, profits from years of exploiting innocent people. The owner, Mike Goldman, tried to run when he saw the FBI coming. He made it 3 blocks before being caught, still clutching a bag full of money. The mayor called an emergency city council meeting. The room was packed with reporters, community leaders, and citizens who'd been victimized. Maya sat in the front row next to Sarah, watching as the mayor announced sweeping changes. Effective immediately, the mayor declared, "We're creating a civilian oversight board for all police vehicle stops. Every impoundment will be reviewed. Body cameras must stay on at all times, and any officer found profiling or abusing power will be immediately terminated." The crowd erupted in applause. Years of complaints, ignored reports, and silent suffering were finally being addressed. In the back of the room, several officers who'd worked with Miller sat uncomfortably, knowing their own misconduct might soon be exposed. Sarah's phone buzzed with messages from other lawyers across the country. Similar schemes were being uncovered in other cities. What started with Maya's stand was becoming a national movement for police accountability. Miller's wife appeared on TV, crying as she told reporters she had no idea about her husband's crimes. "He always said the extra money was from overtime," she sobbed. "Their house, bought with dirty money, would soon be seized by the government. The police chief held a department-wide meeting. Today, we're announcing 27 resignations and 15 terminations, he announced to the shocked room. This department will be cleaned up from top to bottom. Maya received an unexpected call from the dealership where she bought her Mercedes. Miss Thompson, the owner said, we want to offer you a lifetime of free maintenance on your car. Your courage in standing up to Miller helped us discover he was targeting our other customers too. The local news showed footage of more corrupt officers being led away in handcuffs. The towing company's office was closed, a large "seized by FBI" notice plastered on the door. Former victims gathered outside, sharing stories of their ordeals. Miller's fellow officers who'd stayed quiet about his actions faced their own consequences. Some were demoted, others suspended. The blue wall of silence had cracked, and the truth was pouring out. At the courthouse, Miller and his conspirators appeared for their first hearing. Gone was his proud strut and arrogant smile. He shuffled in wearing handcuffs, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The judge denied bail, calling the crimes a profound betrayal of public trust. Sarah organized a support group for all the victims, meeting in her office's conference room. People shared similar stories: luxury cars targeted, fake violations claimed, thousands lost to the towing scam. But now, they weren't powerless anymore. Maya drove home that evening in her Mercedes, thinking about how one moment of standing up for herself had triggered such massive change. Her phone kept buzzing with messages of support and thanks from strangers who'd faced similar discrimination. As she pulled into her driveway, she saw her elderly neighbor waving. "I saw you on TV, dear," the woman called out. "You did what many of us were too scared to do. You made them see us as people, not targets." 1 year later, Maya stood at a podium in front of City Hall. Hundreds of people gathered to mark the anniversary of what the media now called the traffic stop that changed everything. Her Mercedes was parked nearby, a symbol of both success and justice. "A year ago, I was just trying to get to a meeting," Maya began, her voice carrying across the crowd. "Today, we're celebrating real change. 28 corrupt officers behind bars, a new civilian oversight board, and most importantly, a community that stands together against injustice." In the front row, Sarah Chen smiled proudly. Her law firm had helped over 300 victims of similar profiling get justice. The total settlements had reached millions of dollars. But the real victory was in the changes they'd forced. Former Officer Miller watched the news coverage from his prison cell. He'd received 8 years for his crimes, and his fellow inmates had little sympathy for a corrupt cop. His blue uniform was replaced by orange, his authority stripped away, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions. The police department looked different now. New faces, new policies, and most importantly, new attitudes. Every patrol car had upgraded cameras. Every stop was reviewed. The new Civilian Oversight Board, which Maya helped create, made sure no officer could abuse their power again. Captain Rodriguez, now Chief Rodriguez, stepped up to the podium after Maya. "1 year ago, we were shown how far we'd strayed from our duty to protect and serve. Miss Thompson didn't just expose corruption. She showed us how to be better." The towing company's old lot had been transformed into a community center, funded by the seized assets from the corruption case. Inside, free legal clinics helped people understand their rights. The walls displayed photos documenting the case that brought down the corrupt system. Maya's brother, Marcus, won a journalism award for exposing the scandal. His investigation had spread to other cities, leading to similar reforms across the country. Police departments everywhere were under pressure to prove they weren't running the same scams. Sarah walked up to join Maya at the podium, carrying a thick folder. "Today, we're announcing the Maya Thompson Foundation," she declared. "Using the settlement money from our cases, we'll provide legal support to victims of profiling and help fund body cameras for police departments nationwide." The crowd cheered as Maya unveiled the foundation's logo. Some people wiped away tears, remembering their own experiences with corrupt officers. But now they had hope. And more importantly, they had proof that standing up could make a difference. Golden Gate Towing's owner, Mike Goldman, had turned state's evidence, revealing corrupt officers in 3 more precincts. His testimony led to dozens more arrests. He would still serve time, but his cooperation helped ensure no similar schemes could take root again. Maya's real estate business had flourished, partly because people admired her courage. She used her success to help other minority entrepreneurs, creating a mentorship program. Her office wall now displayed the original police report from that day, framed next to news articles about the changes it sparked. As the ceremony ended, a young black girl approached Maya. "My mom got stopped last week," she said. "But the officer was nice. He said they have to be now, because of you." Maya knelt down to the girl's level. "It wasn't just me," she said softly. "It was everyone who spoke up after, everyone who shared their stories, everyone who demanded better. Sometimes all it takes is one person to stand up first, then others find their courage too." That evening, Maya drove home in her Mercedes, the same car that Officer Miller had tried to take away. As she passed the spot where it all happened, she noticed new signs posted along the street. "This is a protected community. All stops recorded and reviewed." Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Just got word. 3 more cities are adopting our oversight program. Change keeps spreading." Maya smiled, thinking about how one moment of standing firm had created waves of change. Her car wasn't just a luxury vehicle anymore. It was a reminder that justice, when pursued with dignity and determination, could transform an entire system.